I'd now like to invite our speakers up to form part of the Q&A panel. You've heard from all the guys today, and we also have Tony Hodgkins from OGA, who's the commercial partner for NOV, joining the panel. We have a couple of roving mics, just the same format as earlier on. If you've got a question, if you just raise your hand, if you'd introduce yourself and maybe the company you represent, if you have a company, that would be very useful to us. So I'd like to open it up now to the audience. I can see Gordon there is itching to speak. Gordon, please, your question.
Well done, guys. Good set of presentations. I think there's a place for you all in the long term, so keep the faith. It's all good stuff. There is a place for production boys. There is a place for FPSO Light. Just keep the faith. My question is, I guess, I know you're all looking at international opportunities, and for your first use, you're all pre-revenue. Do you think you'll get your first use in the UK? And what barriers are in place that need to come down to get you the first use in the UK? And the answer I'm looking for does not involve somebody gifting you $300 million to go to build.
Okay, I think that question is probably applicable to each of the presenters, in all honesty. So I think maybe just start with yourself, Bill, since you're closest, and then we'll carry on down the line, and we'll get the full answer there.
Hi Gordon, good question. I do think first use is got there's more opportunities to go after in UKCS than in some other areas. There seems to be a bit of a force trying to drive this, although it's not quite got there yet. And I'm certainly not looking for 300 million to go and build one for a start off. Mine only costs 135. But what I'm looking for is some small amount of feed capital to do a proper pre-feed at the moment and a safety case, and go from there. Try to then hook one or more interested oil companies to participate in more detailed studies, and maybe a large industrial partner. That's kind of the thinking I'm going through at the moment.
Yeah.
I think from our point of view, I think the first opportunity is more likely to be overseas for us right now. We're further down the road with companies in West Africa, Gulf of Mexico. We would obviously like to get established in the North Sea as well, because that's where we thought it would be when we initially set the vessel design up. And to get moving here, we do need $300 million, Gordon, but if you want to give us it, we'll have it. But what we need really is an operator work with us, give us a cluster, maybe 2 reservoirs, 3 be better, sort of 4 or 5 years production, and we can get going working on that and start getting these things into the field. And I think our view generally, and probably everybody up and down the table, is once you get your technology accepted, it's far easier to sell the second one than it is to sell the first one, really.
Yeah, I think from our side, from OGA, who are working very closely with NOV, well, I'm probably going to sit on the fence here and go 50-50 between UK or NCS versus international. Now, there are opportunities in all jurisdictions. It's a question of which one the planets align first. No pun intended from the solar eclipse from yesterday. But probably the barrier, and I like some of the conversations that were taking place in the first session today, probably the barrier for us is about de-risking of the entire project, but especially de-risking of subsurface knowledge. I mean, a lot of people, and I wouldn't say that takes $300 million or whatever it does take, but it's really for us about certainty over, assurance that you know that you've got a reservoir that is more than likely to produce for a given production rate over a given period of time.
Okay, thanks very much. Any more questions? Yeah, get a lady here just on the right at the aisle.
Hello, I've got a question for Stephen. What's your day rate? Well, you were talking about cost-effective solutions, but you didn't mention money at all. At the end of the day, to me, it doesn't look like new technology. It looks like a small FPSO. And at the end of the day, for an operator, it's all down to day rate.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it is down to day rate. We deliberately didn't put a day rate up there because having worked through a number of scenarios with a number of operators, both in the UK sector and Norwegian and internationally, we see day rates that vary because of both the input parameters on the CapEx side and also the redeployability and potential redeployment risks ourselves and our investors can take on that asset, which drive the day rate. So all I can say is the work we've done to date demonstrates that we're competitive, but I can't give you a day rate.
Okay, thanks for that. Colin here, just on the left. Colin?
Colin Percival from Parkmove. Just following on from that, are we going to get away from traditional FPSO leases? Because unless we are, I struggle to see how we're going to get small fields developed. Who's going to sign up for a 7-year contract at whatever day rate if your field is only going to last a few years? So do you see a model where we could actually just rent an FPSO?
Yeah, if you can. Unless Tony would like to answer also.
Yeah, I think you have to change the model somehow because we need to get the market moving here in the North Sea now. My view is that might be OGA facilitating some operators to work together. You've seen the clusters here in the examples we've given. Possibly one of those reservoirs might be one operator. You might have another reservoir here with another. And historically, it's been very difficult to get oil companies to work together and we'll take a field view on things. And I think that's what we need to do now, really, just rather than one operator saying, this is my reservoir, how do I develop that? And somebody over here trying to do the same thing. I think there needs to be, hopefully facilitated by OGA, some sort of discussion between the two, saying, right, let's look at this a field and maybe even another reservoir here that somebody's got in their bottom drawer that looks quite nice, but they've never been able to do it individually. And we did a study on this, and there's there's a lot of blocks in the North Sea that if you took all the disparate reservoirs that people have got in their bottom drawer and put them into development, it would make a really nice development. But looking at each one individually doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah, I can probably just add to that. I mean, the OG has been fairly active trying to bring a number of operators together to collaborate. We're looking at Southern North Sea as an example, a compression club down there. I know that Perenco have been heavily involved. We've initiated a number of studies looking at clustering, looking at collaboration, and based on what we've seen so far, there's a good positive NPV to be had from bringing individual discoveries together and then try and develop them with multiple operators. And that is a challenge, but we're working on that. We're currently having an initiative down in the Southern North Sea that seems to be making some headway. We expect as we move forward that that same kind of model would actually apply to Central North Sea, Moray Firth, etc. So we think as we move forward, we understand the technology better and we inform the operators more. We have a greater dialogue through our asset stewardship process, our Tier 1 reviews, etc. That we'd hope to make some really tangible progress in that area around collaboration. Yeah. Any more questions from the audience? No. Okay. Well, I've just got one for the panel. I was just wondering about discussions with operators. What's the discussions you've had, and have you found the UKC or the UKCS based operators more or perhaps less responsive to your technology? Be quite interesting, certainly from our perspective here at the OGA, to try and understand that, whether, because you mentioned, Ian, I think there you saw that perhaps your first application of your technology would be overseas. Interested maybe from my perspective to understand why that might be the case, and have you seen blockers or more resistance from the UKCS side in terms of taking that technology on board?
I mean, from our experience, a lot, and I do know the other guys, but they'll not be able to answer themselves, but we found that generally in the North Sea, most of the operators want to be second to one of our ships, you know. It's a leap of faith, but I suppose somebody needs to be first to get the technology into the market. And overseas, there seems to be more willingness. And that could well be because marginal fields in West Africa are 100 million barrels plus, you know, so it's a different scale of marginal field, so it's easier to make that decision. But the blockers we've found here have been a resistance to technology, but a slight unwillingness to want to be first to use new technology, shall we say. That's my personal experience.
Okay. Right, thanks for that.
I think from our perspective there are two elements, and I take the point about not new technology, but one of the drivers behind NOV's strategy is essentially the industrialization of the whole process of developing and operating an FPSO. And if you look at mature industries around the world, those industries drive out cost through standardizing, through industrializing. So our approach is to drive that cost down to what we can get as the lowest possible common denominator. And the discussions, therefore, that we've had with operators have been a lot of it around, you have a honeybee type FPSO, which is maturely, very maturely designed, certainly for the 650. What can it do and what are its operating parameters? And do I have a field that potentially I can look at alternative production profiles to fit within your lowest common denominator cost of the honeybee 650? Because what we don't want to do is to produce the equivalent of a Swiss Army knife of an FPSO that can do everything, because that won't get a solution for anyone in terms of cost. What we're trying to do is get down to a sort of common denominator of cost that can be reduced on a number of fields within an envelope, and those clusters, I think as you alluded to, they don't have to be in the same geographic location. They can be in UKCS, but they can be in various different locations. And I like the discussions about redeployable subsea infrastructure. It was excellent in some earlier sessions. So the discussions we've had, we think very favourably with the operators are, let's try and bring up ourselves together. We on our side know what brings us the lowest cost, both in terms of CapEx, finance and operability, and the operator knows what they can do in terms of maybe making some slight adjustments to their production profiles to fit what we're offering as a solution.
Bill?
Our discussions with operators have mostly been in the UK, with one pretty positive discussion going with an operator last year, and then the cost of tiebacks reduced significantly and they decided to do a big tieback instead. So that was one. Another operator, we were offered to do a free pre-feed for these guys, but they were very concerned about disclosing the details of their actual fluids to us, so much so that they pulled out of the thing. So that was another one. The only other operator that I've had any kind of serious discussion with, my colleagues in Australia have had some discussions with some guys on the west coast there, but I've had some discussions with CNOOC in China, but that's early stage.
Okay, that's fine. Right, thanks very much. If that's all the questions, I'd like to thank our presenters for volunteering and attending the top table. If you guys would like to take your seats back in the front row. Here, I'll just pass you over to Chris Pearson, Solution Centre Manager at the Oil and Gas Technology Centre, and Chris will assist with a wrap-up of today's events, and thanks for your questions, and thanks for participating.
Thank you. Do
Chris.
you want to click it on? Yeah, that's me. Just in case you thought it was you. You going to stay up? Graham, do you want to pop up for a moment? Graham Rogers? I thought for the closing remarks, what I'd like to do is really just ask both Graham and Mr. Duncan here on my left, on my right, to close their own sessions a little bit and take what they took out of the morning session, this afternoon session. I'd also then like to take a moment to thank the events management team from both the Oil and Gas Authority and ourselves for pulling the event together. I hope it's been a good day for you. I'd also like to thank everybody who's attended and presented. Thank you very much. A lot of work. There's a lot of people who put in a lot of effort who didn't get to do the presenting today as well, so I'd also like to thank those if they're in the room. It's worth mentioning them. So, Graham, do you want to summarise this morning for us in a couple of points or a couple of words?
Yeah, I'd just like to thank folk for the comments I received during the breaks and during the lunchtime session at the exhibition place. What I took away from those comments was that people are a bit enthused about looking at this roadmap and going down this route. I think they recognise that there's a number of challenges, but they're not insurmountable. But the biggest piece would be around how we align the industry to deliver it. So that's what I got.
Okay, thanks for that, Graham. I think it was very good, the morning session. I think it talked to how we can reduce the costs by up to 50%, which is our aspiration. It doesn't mean we've delivered that. It doesn't mean it's robust solutions, and it doesn't mean it does away with all of the risk, the uncertainty that we've talked around, but it's certainly a step in the right direction. Neil, from this afternoon?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really encouraged by the range of technologies that we've seen today, both in tieback and the standalone. I think for me, reducing the OPEX, really key. We heard from some really good technologies there about reducing the manpower offshore and even potentially slightly longer term, not that far in the distance, actually eliminating that. So that's going to have a major impact, I think, on field economics. So that's the main thing for me. I think the other thing round about standalone and tieback, although they're different technologies, they're quite complementary, because some of the tieback technologies will require some form of pipeline, umbilical. There's lots of learnings, I think, that we can take from what we learned this morning on a tieback, apply that to the standalone, hopefully bring the cost of these developments down. And from the OGA perspective, we're really keen to encourage the collaboration side of things, encourage the clustering, try and get economies of scale and try and get some of these discoveries moving. And I think today we've brought together investors and license holders and tech providers. So I think it's been quite a useful exercise, and I'd just like to thank everyone for their time. Obviously, it's quite a long day. You've been here a long time, and it's great to see so many people still here at the end.
I know. We've locked the doors.
Yeah, well, that's...
that helped a lot,
yeah,
I felt. Good planning, project management at work here. I think there's also another thank to the exhibition centre and their staff for dealing with all the requests last minute, and etc. And I think it's been a very easy day from us, from our point of view. There is a comment there. Obviously, we're going to be at Offshore Europe. We're going to be on a stand. We're still collaborating. There's a range of technologies which are either in existence already, and we're looking for deployment opportunities. And I think we've talked to some of those earlier. I think there's a range of technologies which are quite fundamental but can have a major impact. As Neil said and alluded to a moment ago, if we can down-man, if we go to fully autonomous, which we already do to a certain extent subsea, unmanned facilities, down-manned facilities, then there's a great opportunity from the overall point of view, from the field developments. We saw, and thank you for sharing some of the numbers, very, very insightful numbers, I think. If we can reduce further the capital, not just the capital, but the operating cost as well, perhaps by a unmanned or a down-manning situation, then again, we can affect some life cycle costs from our point of view. There's one theme, and I would also like to thank Scott, by the way, from Zero Waste Scotland, for contributing earlier. There's one thing that we're really keen on, and I think this afternoon's solutions really talk to that. If we try and have an ethos that then designs for disassembly, not for decommissioning, we no longer think of decommissioning as a liability at the end. We think it's the start of the next project. Whether it's remanufacturing, reuse, repurposing, it doesn't really matter. The principle then in terms of the economic arguments work out very, very strongly. And other industries are ahead of us in this instance, and we'd like to sort of play catch up a little bit between ourselves, the Oil and Gas Authority, and the OGTC. So I think if there's any other remarks, then I'll just thank everybody for their attendance and for staying awake where appropriate. And the doors could be unlocked, and Charlie's standing by the door ready to unlock it as we speak. Thank you very much.
I think the only thing, sorry, I was going to say the exhibition will obviously remain open another 2 hours, so if you haven't had enough time down there, the exhibitors will be there. Make use of the time, and enjoy the networking opportunities that brings. Okay, thanks very much.
Thanks.